Hello out there, casual fanatics. I am the Dork Lord of the Sith, Emperor Dorkatine, Jeremy of Casual Mode, and with me is my big brother, sometimes sports correspondent, Obi-Rob Kenobi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. And this is going to be a reaction vlog to Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. So, just a couple of announcements really quick. This may actually end up being the only big video that we do this week because altered plans and such have prevented me from working on the next Pokemon fan theories, but don't worry about it. I apologize for getting off track. But the other big announcement for this one is, of course, there are spoilers inbound. So if for some reason you didn't see the title where it said right up at the front, spoilers, this is your last warning. There are spoilers here. We are going to spoil the fuck out of this movie because we're going to talk about everything that we've seen because we just saw it and we're, wanting to share our thoughts about the movie with y'all. So, again, if you have not seen the movie, and if you haven't, shame on you, this is your last chance to go watch something else. So, look up some news, go to TV tropes. Actually, don't go to TV tropes. That may ruin your life. But last warning, going to be spoilers. So, first things first, of course, the trailers for the movie. There were some really great trailers for the movie. Captain America Civil War was one.
Batman vs. Superman.
Dawn of Justice, which made the movie look better than it's probably actually going to be. And Warcraft movie was there. And actually, probably the best trailer that was there was for the next Disney CGI production called Zootopia. Unfortunately, I fear that it may have also spoiled the funniest joke in that movie because, well, it did was it basically played a full scene where the two main characters, a fox and a rabbit policeman who's very hyper and energetic and fast-talking, have to deal with the DMV that is being run by sloths.
Kind of like how you would normally feel at a regular DMV.
Except slower. So, it was really funny, but I fear the funniest joke of the movie has been spoiled. So, that's unfortunately par for the course for movies these days. Yeah. The other trailer I wanted to talk about, and the only trailer in which I could not suppress my live riffing urges, was one for this movie called The Fifth Wave, which appears to be kind of this oh my god, aliens invade the world again kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it has a female protagonist who seems to be in the front of things. And, of course, they showed scenes of her in a romantic subplot, which made me remark, why are there no movies with female heroines that don't have a romantic subplot? Of course, that was until the ride home when I remembered Alien.
Sigourney Weaver, badass.
Yeah. So, these days it seems like, if you have a female heroine, even if you have a female heroine, there's going to be a romantic subplot somewhere, even if it makes no goddamn sense. So, yes, aliens are taking over the world, but I want to fuck that guy. Anyway. So, the movie itself. If I remember correctly, there have been stories that said that Disney would not have their marker, their little, the CGI castle thing that so often gets parodied thing right in front. And they didn't lie. It was not there. The only logo that was right there before the iconic title card of, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. The only logo was that of Lucasfilm. So once the previews were done, they wasted no time getting into the movie. And yeah, of course, as by the way, I should mention the reason why we got to see this movie is because it was a Christmas present from our nerdy benefactor, aka our sister. Hi, Steph.
Hey, Steph.
And one thing she had mentioned, the only thing that she had mentioned about the movie beforehand, was that it had an awesome score by John Williams, which is pretty much a given considering it's a Star Wars movie. Let's face it, that was probably the best part even of the prequels. At least they kept that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why, while Episode 1 is widely reviled, Duel of the Fates is still considered awesome. And it's not just because it was overscoring probably the coolest lightsaber fight to that point in time in Star Wars history. So, but yeah, of course, it started out, it actually kind of mirrored A New Hope in many, many ways. Because it started out on a desert planet with focusing on working class people. In this case, our main heroine, Rey, and the fact that she's basically kind of an indentured servant there on the planet of Jakku. So there's an awful lot of parallels there. And actually, the first few scenes were with the Republic pilot Poe Dameron and little BB-8. So cute.
Yeah, he's cute, but yet he's, you kind of think the way he's figured like a oversized soccer ball.
Yeah, well, that's probably where they got it from. And that's probably what he was designed after, was a soccer ball, really. But yeah, and the main conceit of the whole movie was that Poe, at the behest of General Leia, who's heading the resistance on behalf of the New Galactic Republic, or as it's just called, the Republic, has found the last piece to a map to find where Luke Skywalker disappeared to. And apparently, in the intervening years of between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and this is actually some bits from later on in the movie here. Apparently, in those intervening years, Luke Skywalker did reestablish the Jedi Order, which is kind of a nice little shout out to the parts of the EU that got slashed out of continuity. But in that time, he had been training people in the ways of the Force and training a new Jedi Order until one of his students, who we'll get to the exact identity of later, but suffice it to say became Kylo Ren, ended up falling to the dark side, betraying and murdering the whole bunch. And since then, Luke Skywalker zoomed off to an unknown part of space to try and find the first temple of the Jedi, basically where the Jedi Order was founded for unknown reasons. And Poe managed to find that last piece of the map to find where that planet is. But on Jakku, he's confronted by Kylo Ren and the stormtroopers of the First Order, which are basically the last vestiges of the Empire. You may compare them to some of you who are familiar with the EU, which he isn't. I am. He's not. You might compare them maybe to the Imperial Remnant from those books, except a lot better organized and with higher tech. And in the course of that, Poe and BB-8 actually get separated, with BB-8 containing that piece of the map within himself, having that data crystal inside of him, which again kind of mirrors mirrors, Leia putting in the Death Star plans into R2D2, and R2D2 and C-3PO getting sent down to Tatooine via escape pod. Eventually, BB-8 finds his way into the aforementioned Rey's hands, and Rey's kind of reluctant to keep BB-8, but she realizes the importance because she's able to talk to BB-8, and realizes, I might want to keep this guy close, if for no other reason than to keep him safe. Hold on a second, I gotta do a little thing. I should have done that earlier, I apologize. When you use a lot of hand motions and most of them are down off camera, they kind of waste it. Anyway. Kylo Ren is not actually in charge of the First Order. He's somewhat in league with the lead of the First Order. And both of them are overseen by this mysterious benefactor named Lord Smoke, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Smoke or Snoke, something
Snoke,
like that.
something like that.
I think it was Smoke because he was kind of there, able to talk to them, but then he kind of wasn't. It was kind of similar to the Emperor's hologram.
When it was first come out, yeah.
Yeah, kind of similar to the Emperor's hologram, but with a little more solidity and I mean, yeah, with a little more solidity. So it's, I don't really know how to describe it very well. I really don't.
Yeah, it is, well, it's obviously a lot more CGI than back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, and of course it's even more advanced than the special edition was when they bumped up the quality of that. But, they were basically still trying to keep kind of the same look from the old movie while still making it sharper and better looking. So, yeah. So whether it was a hologram or a projection or a kind of a astral projection or the person actually coming in, we don't know. But we do know, dude is freaking huge. However it came about, when he was talking to Kylo Ren and the leader of the First Order, Lord Smoke was huge. And at one point, there's one, you probably saw in the trailers, that one of the stormtroopers is, actually pulls off his helmet and reveals himself to be most decidedly not a clone of Jango Fett. And, of course, that is our deuteragonist of the film, Ren. I mean, not Ren, Finn. Finn. Taken from his call sign, which was FN 2187. Yeah, FN 2187, yeah. So, because he doesn't know his name. The reason why he took that name is because he doesn't know his real name, because he was taken when he was very, very young and indoctrinated into becoming a soldier. And it's actually mentioned why there aren't, why this group of stormtroopers were not clones, why the group that Finn's in is not clones, because at one point, I think it was the leader of the First Order actually asked why they weren't using clone soldiers. So, I mean, the Empire still uses the clone soldiers, but apparently they also have this kind of backup. They also have people who either enlist, as seen in, the original trilogy, or people who are, for lack of a better phrase, drafted from birth, much like how the Jedi treated younglings. So, kind of a dark mirror to that, really. But this
your alternate universes.
Yeah, but Finn is, for whatever reason, his brainwashing breaks, and in the middle of the battle, he sees that he and his fellows, are being ordered to commit atrocities, to commit war crimes by Kylo Ren and by the leaders of the First Order, and he sees one of his fellows die right in front of him, and the guy reaches up and touches his helmet and leaves a smear of blood across it, and at that point Finn's like, the fuck am I doing this for?
I'm out.
So
I don't want to do this no more. I'm out.
So the First Order actually captures Poe Dameron to try and figure out what happened to the piece of the map that they've got. And Kylo Ren apparently has some kind of force telepathy where he can probe into people's minds forcefully, and he discovers that, of course, it's down with BB-8. But at one point, Finn actually comes across Poe and decides, this Resistance guy could be my ticket out of here. So I'm going to break him out. We're going to steal a TIE fighter. And this was actually the first part of the movie where in myself I started saying, well, let me rewind my thought pattern a little here. One of the problems people had with the prequel trilogies, and to a lesser extent some of the people had with the original trilogies, was that some of Lucas's writing didn't sound like things people would actually say. I mean, I think even Harrison Ford himself at one point kind of told Lucas how hard it was to believe people actually say that crap. Which, let's face it, it's Harrison Ford. I believe that happened. Good. So, the dialogue in this movie felt very natural. Because you have Poe Dameron and Finn, who have never met each other in their life, but are thrown into a situation where they are depending on each other to stay alive.
And you got Finn and Rey, too.
Yeah, and then later on, Finn and Rey as well, their interactions. And then even later on, when they meet Han Solo and Chewie.
Which, by the way, the theater we were in blew into applause when they came up.
Yeah, several of the moments, actually, the theater we were in, people actually applauded and laughed at all of the jokes. And the writing on this was spectacular. It was really, really good. And maybe part of that is perception colored by the prequel trilogies being the most recent ones. But even so, the writing is so much better.
Because I think Lawrence Kasdan, who also wrote Empire Strikes Back or something. I don't know. Well, anyway, he did some writing in the originals, but he came back to write in this one, as well as JJ.
Yeah, so much better writing, more realistic dialogue between people. You really get a sense that these are actual people. You get a sense that they are people with hopes and dreams and worries and fears and destinies. Instead of, I don't like sand. It's rough. Of course. You have that, and then you have, in that first scene, the banter between Poe and Finn, where Finn's trying to fly the plane, and he's got Finn over in the gunner's seat, and they're trying to coordinate so that they can escape alive. And yeah, some of the funniest moments in there were really just because of that fact that they got the they got banter right, things that you can imagine people would be saying when they're trying to flee for their lives. And I'm kind of jumping around here. I'm trying to go chronologically, but I am jumping around here. So screw it, jump around we will.
Not that we're in the House of Pain, but
anyway, pack it up, pack it in.
Let him begin again.
All right. Yeah. part of the reason why Jakku is so important, aside from it being the planet where we first meet Rey, is apparently at some point there was actually a huge freaking battle here. Because there is tons of scrap, and part of what Rey does is find bits of scrap to sell to this one dude who we never got the name of, who basically is just
junk dealer.
I guess you could say maybe this version's Jabba the Hutt. I don't know. Anyway, kind of the guy who kind of slipped in and took over things.
Star Wars version of Fred Sanford, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he never did call her dummy.
True.
You only get a quarter punch, you dummy.
You big dummy.
Anyway, apparently at some point there was a huge battle on Jakku, which, if I remember correctly, is actually a part of Star Wars Battlefront. So you may actually see where some of this wreckage came from if you play Battlefront. Don't. EA, don't. From what I hear, EA kind of screwed that up. Anyway, among the pieces of junk that ended up there was the Millennium Falcon, and Rey and Finn come. Well, first they're trying to escape from the First Order, who have found out where BB-8 is and are trying to track him down and attacking the settlement where Rey is that Finn has managed to come across. And first, they're going for a ship that looks, nicer, prettier. I believe they called it a quad jumper ship.
Yeah, quad jumper
ship. And it says, "Why are we taking that one over there? Oh, that one's a hunk of junk." And the quad jumper gets blown up. Okay, the junk looks good. And then they pan over, and it's the Millennium Falcon, and everybody cheers. And so they hop on board the Millennium Falcon. Rey gets going over to the pilot, and she points Finn over to the gunner's seat, so he goes down into, I believe, the exact same one that Luke was in. Not the one that Han was in, the upper one, but he went into the lower one that Luke was sitting in. And she somehow manages to pilot the ship by herself, although she does have to reach way over to get the shields online, because,
Chewie hadn't come on yet.
Yeah, because, usually this ship's being flown by two people, or one person and a Wookiee, and they manage to take off, only to get swallowed by a ship, which they think is the First Order. So they hide in the smuggling compartment, thinking they're going to try and gas out some stormtroopers. Only there comes Han and Chewie. And of course they hear clunkiness, so they go straight to the smuggling base and they find Finn and Rey. So we have them meet up there. And again, this is where the writing really came into its own, because when they're talking about the intervening years and what had happened in Han's life, Harrison Ford really got over the gravitas of everything that he saw and everything that he experienced over the course, not just of the original 3 movies, but even really in the intervening times. And that, once upon a time, when we first meet him in A New Hope, he was just your average smuggler who believed a little bit in luck, but didn't believe in anything mystical. But his life was altered by that experience. And even though in this instance he did go back to smuggling, which we'll get back into a little bit later, he even so, he realizes now how much bigger the universe is. Didn't stop him from getting back into smuggling, but he does realize. And apparently, when he got back into smuggling, he also got back into debt, because he has managed to screw over even more cartels than he previously had. And he was actually into smuggling live animals. I forget what they were called.
I forgot to.
I forget what they were called, but for those of us who are D&D geeks, they looked like giant beholders with razor sharp teeth. Okay. And um, while Finn and Rey are hiding down in the lower parts of the larger ship that Han and Chewie had been flying since having lost track of the Falcon, they accidentally let those creatures loose. Cue smuggling cartels being munched. And Finn very nearly being munched. But, yeah, but they get away, and instead of going straight to the cartel, Han's like, well, the First Order knows this ship. They're going to be looking for this ship. We need to get the plans onto an unmarked vehicle and get that sent over to the Resistance so that the First Order can't find where the Resistance is hanging out, So they head basically to the Mos Eisley Cantina. By the way, fun fact, and I know this because I watched the videos on Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show YouTube page, where he had this interview with J.J. Abrams. And I don't think you know this unless you saw the same videos.
No, I haven't seen that video.
The music that was in that cantina was written by J.J. Abrams and the composer of the movie Hamilton, of the musical Hamilton.
Wow.
Yeah. And honestly, I think it sounded better than and I shudder whenever I say this, jizz tracks from the original.
You have to go back to watch Here There Be Dragons with Nash when he does
the expanded trash
to get the gist of what we're talking about here.
Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and explain it now. At one point, during George Lucas's slip to give no fucksville, he decided that the musical style that the likes of the modal nodes from the Star Wars Cantina and the Max Rebo band from Empire, or Return of the Jedi rather, the kind of music they were playing was called jizz. Jizz.
We kid you not, folks.
If you wonder why that is a questionable thing, well, clearly you have never been a teenager. So, but yeah.
Or you've just forgotten about your teen years.
And it is there that we find out that two things are revealed. First, Rey did not know this at this point, but it is revealed to her that Finn was a former stormtrooper on the run from the First Order because he went AWOL. The other reveal is that Rey has the Force in her. And how she finds this out is she goes down in kind of the basement of the cantina. Maz Cantina. I forget what her last name was, but her first name was Maz. Kind of this little tiny-eyed alien who had magnified specs.
She kind of reminds me of Hetty from NCIS Los Angeles.
Yeah, or Edna Mode from The Incredibles.
True.
Which is kind of a fairer comparison because Disney.
Yeah.
But yeah, she had like big magnifying specs on her eyes. She goes down into that cantina's basement, and she finds where Maz has found Luke's original lightsaber. Not the one he used in Return of the Jedi. His original one.
The one that Obi-Wan gave him.
The one that got lost on Bespin. It's not explained how she got it, but she has it. And when Rey touches this, it sparks off Force visions in her. Kind of like how... Well, what came to my mind during that scene was actually the words of Yoda from Empire Strikes Back. Through the Force, things you will see. The past, the present, old friends long gone. And in that moment, you realize, oh my gosh, Rey is Force sensitive. She's having Force visions. And it freaks her out. She goes running off into the jungle. And while she's running off in the jungle, and while Finn has decided that he's going to fuck off to the outer rim because he is tired, because he is that scared of the First Order. The First Order reveal that they have a brand new super weapon. And for those of us familiar with the extended universe, it kind of bears some similarities to a weapon known as the Sun Crusher. Only instead of blowing suns to fuck up, it blows multiple planets to fuck up by using the power of a sun that it drains away like a black hole. So
I hope that retired science teacher is not hearing this video.
Oh yeah, that one from North Carolina.
Yeah.
But yeah, they actually suck the sun in, it's kind of like if you ever saw Stargate Universe. It's kind of like the solar collectors from the ship the Destiny, except on a much grander scale and evil. Because it doesn't just take up like a little bit of solar material for power. It sucks the entire goddamn thing. And once it's got that star completely sucked, you're fucked. And they actually test it out by sending out lasers toward the planet where they're standing on. You can see it obliterating moons. It actually hits parts of the planet, and it doesn't completely destroy the planet, but because that planet's huge, but it destroys
it messes it up pretty good.
A lot of it. And that's just the first wave. Because after that, they got TIE fighters and stormtroopers. And it looks like Han and Finn and Chewie are about to get captured, but the cavalry is here. It's the Resistance, led by two people. One of whom was thought dead on Jakku, way back. Our old friend Poe Dameron, and General, nay Princess, Leia Organa Solo. Or at least we figure at one point she was Leia Organa Solo, considering the interactions between her and Han. And that is where we get the third major reveal of this movie. Kylo Ren is, and again I'm pulling from later on in the movie to complete this reveal, Ben Solo, the son of Han and Leia.
And if you kind of know Harrison Ford in real life, he has a son named Ben, who's a pretty good chef.
But yeah, they had a son that apparently they named after. I imagine they named him after Ben Kenobi, alternate name for Obi-Wan Kenobi. And at one point, they had sent him off to Luke to learn the ways of the Force. But then a Master Smoke got in Ben's head and turned him to the dark side. And at some point, Kylo also managed to, and now that we know what his backstory is, I think I know how he got it. I imagine what happened was Luke had kept Darth Vader's helmet as a memento, a reminder of what his father was and what had happened and how his father ended up being. And I imagine what happened was when Kylo was killing off his fellow Padawans, he went and stole that helmet. The burnt remains of that helmet as well. And left with Smoke, joined up with the First Order, and then started to fuck all the things up. And but during this battle, Kylo actually comes and confronts Rey and tries to read her mind, but is unable to. And he captures her so that he can try and obtain that last piece of the map. And so actually Han and Finn both see this and see them going into the ship as the First Order forces are pulling out. And Finn's like, I gotta rescue this girl. she basically saved my life, and I kind of take a little fancy to her. I gotta rescue her. Of course, as we find out, she's pretty much did her own rescuing later on because they prepare to basically kind of do yet another Death Star assault on what is called Star Killer Base. See what they did there. Mm-hmm. It's much like The Force Awakens is actually a reference to what the Skywalker family's original name was going to be. And it is a very apt name for what it does because of how its function that I described earlier. It kills stars, and then it kills you. But they are planning an assault, and of course some of the critical details of it are actually provided by Finn, although apparently, hilariously, he was originally a stormtrooper assigned to sanitation before he was a part of the First Order force on Jakku. Don't know how he managed to make his way to a battle group from sanitation. I'm not going to speculate. But you know what that reminds me of? I kind of wonder if J.J. Abrams wasn't watching the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special when he was writing it. Because
another Disney property, by the way.
Because in the Phineas and Ferb Star Wars special, both the Candace, Buford, and Baljeet analogs, their duty as stormtroopers is to be errand boys. They're off to get socks for Darth Vader. So you do again, and that's the sense where you have stormtroopers who aren't just elite, who aren't just fighters. They're also there to do the grunt work. So I have to wonder if when he wrote that line, if he wasn't watching that special.
Like I said, another Disney property. Why not? And also, we got to see our old pal Akbar. On the base in
the Illyrium system is what it was. I believe it was called. Which, whenever I hear Illyrium, I think the alien material from XCOM, but now it's a system in the Star Wars canon. So, but anyway, yeah, they're at that base. The return of Admiral Akbar. No, he doesn't say the line. But he does say something, not exactly like, but something akin to "we can't resist firepower of that magnitude." How are we going to fight against something with firepower of that magnitude, or something like that? I was
going to say he's probably not an admiral, probably a general now or something.
Admiral, general, same thing, different branches. Oh. And actually, they did refer to him as Admiral Akbar. So,
okay.
Well, not Akbar, but they did refer to him as Admiral. But, so yeah, they're basically preparing for yet another Death Star run, which is another way that it basically paralleled A New Hope. Some cynical people out there might say that this kind of rips off bits and pieces from A New Hope. I am not one of those people. I will say that it is an homage because they took the bits from The New Hope and added new spins on them. Like one of our protagonists being a former stormtrooper, or the fact that the Obi-Wan Kenobi analog doesn't show up for a vast majority of the movie. Yeah. Or the fact that actually, in a way, we kind of had three protagonists with Poe Dameron, even though he was missing from the movie for quite a while. He was basically actually kind of the Wedge Antilles. And I would not be surprised if, much like Dennis Lawson's venerable character before him, he manages to survive all parts of this trilogy. By the way, fun fact, Dennis Lawson, who played Wedge Antilles, uncle to Ewan McGregor, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel trilogy.
And now you know the rest of the story.
Which is part of the reason why Ewan McGregor got to be in that movie. And let's face it, Ewan McGregor is probably also one of the best parts of the prequels because he was a damn good Obi-Wan. But anyway, in order to be able to assault this, they actually have to also pull a page out of Return of the Jedi and shut down the shield generator. And this actually comes up with another interesting spin part on this. They really did a lot more with the hyperspeed drive on the Millennium Falcon in this because, normally most of the time that you see ships go into hyperdrive, it's out in open space. Either they're trying to get away from somebody and they've managed to clear enough away from the planet before they make the jump to light speed, or the light speed just doesn't work until they're about a moon's distance away from the planet. But this time, the first time that they use it is actually when they're taking off from the larger freighter that Han and Chewie had been using in the intervening years. And they just jump straight into hyperspace right out of the dock, which was really interesting to see them actually do that, because they even lampshade it. It's a crazy thing, but they did it anyway because they pretty much had to. And then, in order to get to past the screens, according to Han, it's actually keyed to keep things out that are moving at a lower speed. But if you're going superluminal speed, you can actually jump through the shield and come out on the other side, which is exactly what they did. And I realize stuff like that wasn't possible way, way, way back in the day with, when we had TIE fighters on strings, which actually kind of, I think, had a humorous callback when Poe and Finn were trying to get the TIE fighter out of the First Order ship because it was still tied to the dock.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was intentional, but I think that was kind of a little bit of a nod to the TIE fighters on strings from the original trilogy. But a lot of this stuff, it wasn't possible with practical effects way back in the day. They can do that stuff now, and it actually shows not just an evolution in the technology, it shows an evolution in the way that the characters are thinking about doing things and how they've evolved their flying skills in such a way that they can do insane stuff like hyper jump through a planetary shield. Of course, if the Empire had thought about that in The Empire Strikes Back, that would have been a much shorter movie.
True.
In fact, the series would have been much shorter. But look, yeah.
No, it's neither.
Anyway. But yeah, they managed to force jump in through the shield and get in there to try and assault the shield generator part of it, which again took notes from Return of the Jedi. And while they're there, Kylo is trying to interrogate Rey, but because the Force has awakened in her, see what I did there, she is not only able to resist his mind probing, she's able to look into his mind and see that there is fear in him. And of course, as we know very well from 6 movies before this, don't deny it, there were 6 movies. As we know from all 6 of those movies, fear leads to hate. It leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side. And of course, so we've got the intercutting parts where you've got Poe Dameron leading the space battle. You've got Leia sitting back at the base monitoring everything. And then you have Han, Chewie, Finn, and Rey down on the base level trying to get everything taken care of. And actually, like I said earlier, Rey managed to save herself. Because although it took like 3 tries for her to get this right, without any coaching whatsoever, she learned the Jedi mind trick. Yeah. It's like she said the first time, You will release my bonds and leave the cell with the door open. The stormtrooper's like,
What'd you say?
And then so she says it again, and then he's like, I'll tighten those bonds if you don't, something to the effect of, I'll tighten those bonds if you don't shut up. But then she clears her mind and says much more calmly a third time. And after that, you see the stormtrooper kind of flinch. And then he says, I will release your bonds and leave the cell with the door open. And
you will leave your weapon.
Oh, yeah, as he's walking away, Ray goes, and you will drop your weapon. And I will drop my weapon. And he drops his weapon. So, it turned, it turned kind of this, subtle badass thing from A New Hope, and to a lesser extent also from Return of the Jedi. And added some comedic elements to it, but also made it much more awesome. Because now it is being not just used as a deflection tactic, it's being used for someone to literally save themselves from danger. Which is something that you haven't seen done if you have never played one of the Star Wars video games, specifically the Jedi Knight series, because you can actually use Force Trick to either turn enemies away, or make them shoot their other people for a while. It's a fun power to have in those video games. That's why I love that series. And yeah, she rescues herself. She meets up with the rest of them, and they're going to go blow the shield generator. But Kylo Ren, of course, sensing that Papa Han's around, goes to confront him. And Han actually is going to confront him, mostly because Leia had told him before the mission that, if at all possible, to bring their son back. And here's where the major reason why I gave that spoiler warning right at the front comes in. Because this is going to be, for Star Wars fans, pretty much what Judi Dench's M's death was to those of us who are James Bond fans.
And this is also kind of a callback to Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a callback to Empire Strikes Back. It's also kind of a callback to New Hope, where Kenobi is facing off against Darth Vader. Because it looks like Han has gotten through to his son, and his son even has his mask off so that you can actually see his face. It looks like he's gotten through, but just as the last bits of the sunlight fade away and the light in the room turns red, by the way, great color choice there, JJ. Kylo ignites the lightsaber straight into Han Solo. So, yeah, we have our first original trilogy casualty of the J.J. Abrams trilogy. And like I said, that was the moment. That was the heartbreaking moment. That was, again, much like seeing Judi Dench's M die in Skyfall, at least for me, because, I mean, while I did watch the original James Bond movies, Judi Dench was my M. She was the one that I liked the best as my M. So, yeah. So,
and I'm sitting here basically like this the whole time.
Yeah, because, I mean, for one thing, huge guts to kill off one of the original trilogy characters. One of the protagonists, no less, of the original trilogy for this movie. Not entirely unexpected. In fact, I suspected something like this might happen. And it still takes a lot of guts, and it is a very deep emotional moment. And, of course, it also basically says now that Kylo's gone. Kylo has gone bye-bye. He is full on dark side. He has done the one thing that Darth Vader could not do, and that is turn so completely that he was capable of killing his family. And that is the dragon to the big bad of our current trilogy. This is going to be a rocky trilogy, folks. And I don't mean quality-wise. I mean, this one's going to be a roller coaster. But, of course, because Chewie actually had the detonator, so he was able to detonate. And they were able to get away in Falcon, but not before, while the planet is imploding, starting to implode around them. Well, first, Finn, who had actually gotten Luke Skywalker's lightsaber from the cantina and taken him with him and had used it in the past, he has a brief, cool fight scene with Kylo Ren. But the real fight scene with Kylo Ren is once Finn is knocked out, and Finn,
Right.
Well, first Kylo Ren is trying to, force pull Luke's lightsaber to him because he wants that remnant. He wants that little bit of Luke Skywalker because he wants basically to feel like he's defeated Luke Skywalker totally. And he's pulling it and kind of wondering why it's not pulling immediately. And then it starts to move. Straight past him and into the arms of Rey. And she ignites it and everyone claps. Because, female Jedi protagonist.
Bad ass.
And I had to suppress myself from saying, go kick his ass, Rey. And what follows is a very relatively simple lightsaber battle compared to some of the ones that have been in some of the movies. I think really it's more comparable to about the one from Return of the Jedi than any of the ones in the prequel because there's not that much acrobatics. Mostly because they're fighting in a snow-covered forest, which actually added its own interesting, unique element to the battle itself because it's close quarters combat in really, really tight and very dangerous quarters with not just the trees around, but the planet starting to go all Namek on them.
Yeah, that's one way to cut trees down is, throw lightsabers around.
Yeah. And it looks like Rey's about got the upper hand and might actually be about to finish Kylo off when the ground between them pulls down and separates them. And Rey just looks across the gulf at him, turns off her lightsaber, and walks away. Bad ass. Rock on, girl. And so, of course, the movie ends with Starkiller Base being completely destroyed. The head of the First Order and Smoke get away with Kylo Ren. And Rey and Chewie and BB-8 get away in the Falcon.
With Finn.
And there was actually... I kind of skipped over this at one point. Because at one point when they were preparing for the battle, they were hoping that with the piece that BB-8 had, they could be able to find a map to where Luke is. But it was only a piece of the map. The rest of the map is contained within the databanks of everybody's favorite astromech droid.
R2-D2.
But, according to C-3PO, he has been in low power mode ever since Luke Skywalker disappeared. Meaning, it is now canon in Star Wars movies that robots are capable of experiencing depression. Toward the end of the movie, R2-D2, I hate to use the term snaps out of it, but
he comes out of his funk.
Wakes up from it just enough to realize, wait a minute, I have some useful information here. I should probably share it. So we kind of, and it's really kind of adorable because the first time we have kind of a moment where BB-8 rolls up to R2-D2 and is trying to kind of wake him up, kind of a senpai noticed me kind of a senpai noticed me kind of a thing. But then when R2-D2 wakes up, BB-8's coming back to him and is like, senpai! So you know, and R2-D2 is like, oh, hi, Kohai. So
leave it to him to incorporate Japanese anime in this.
It was basically a robot senpai noticed me, and it was adorable. Anyway, between the galactic database that R2-D2 has, and of course the piece missing is the exact same size and shape that BB-8 has, they are able to use that piece to chart a course from their current planet over to where Luke has been hiding out. And the movie ends with Rey, who has now inherited the Millennium Falcon, alongside Chewie and R2-D2, heading off to this planet, climbing a wide variety of steps. What are you doing?
I'm making an illustration. And with Rey coming up.
Yeah, it comes up the steps, and all you see is this figure in a cloak. And you kind of can see a little bit of a beard. And he turns around, he pulls the hood down, and basically, Luke Skywalker looks very Ben Kenobi right now. I mean, full-on gray, full beard. And as kind of a sign of deference and respect, Rey holds out Luke Skywalker's lightsaber to him as if to say,
I got something for you.
As if to say, Master Skywalker, I believe I have something that belongs to you. Wipe to credits, and of course the first thing that shows, directed by J.J. Abrams. And I think people applauded at that point, not just so much from the fact that the movie was pretty darn amazing, but because it finally didn't say directed by George Lucas.
Or anybody else.
But, yeah, final thoughts. Oh, my... like I said, if this is what we've got to look forward to this trilogy, this is definitely a worthy successor to the original trilogy, and already beats the pants off of the prequel trilogy by miles. And I have faith. I was a little worried at first going into it because of J.J.
Everybody
Abrams.
was worried that J.J. Abrams is directing Star Wars. Oh, dear God, I hope he doesn't mess this up.
Yeah, well, everyone was worried because of what had happened in the Star Trek reboot, which is now no longer even directed by him. But... yeah, people were worried, mostly because he's been known for some very weird movies out there. I mean, he directed Cloverfield. He was one of the people responsible for Lost, which is a TV show I will forever hate for asking more questions than it ever answered, or questioning more answers than it ever answered any questions, as I like to say.
But he did have a TV show that introduced us to Jennifer Garner.
Oh, yeah, Alias, yes. But yeah, like I said, writing was on point. Special effects, of course, always a strong point of the Star Wars movies, no matter which movies you're looking at. Story was great. Of course, sound fantastic. I mean, keep in mind, this is the movie series that invented THX. Okay? This is the movie series that THX was spawned from. So you have a brilliant score.
Scenery was top notch.
Oh, absolutely. They picked some awesome locations, especially that final planet where
where Skywalker, when they got to Skywalker.
And it also actually the fact that those locations were so stunning was actually kind of made Rey even more endearing because, she was on Jakku, which was a desert planet. And the very first planet she's like, I didn't know there so much green existed in the galaxy. To which I'm like, girl, if you think this is green, you ain't seen the forest moon of Endor. If you think this is green, you ain't seen Yavin. Okay? You ain't seen Yavin 4, huh? But yeah, everything was really on its game, and of course, it being owned by the mouse. The mouse is highly protective of their properties. It is a godsend that Star Wars finally got away from Fox, because Fox's movies have been kind of doing this little number over the years, whereas Disney, with a few rare dips in the road, usually stays at a fairly consistent level of awesome. From all the way back in the day, all the way through the current day, including and also including the occasional spike with a majority of the Pixar movies.
Yeah.
For the most part, Disney doesn't make shit. For the most part. And so Star Wars now being in their hands is probably the best damn thing that ever happened to Star Wars. And looking at this movie, it was... Oh, the Force is alive again. We thought the Force had been killed off, but no, it lives. And they hit notes not just that were homages to previous entries in the movies. They hit notes that homaged bits of the extended universe, even bits of the extended universe that got cut out. The fact that Han and Leia's offspring was Force sensitive. That was first introduced in the EU because they had twins, Jason and Jaina, and one of them actually at one point did fall to the dark side, which is probably what inspired Kylo Ren, being Han and Leia's son, falling to the dark side. As for future speculation, okay, one of the things was that apparently Rey was taken away from her family and brought to Jakku by some force. We don't know who her family is, but I have to wonder if at some point Luke may not have had a daughter. Because I'm not discounting the fact that Rey may not be related to the Skywalkers or the Solos in any way. I mean, that could be very possible, and if that's the case, that may actually end up being possibly even a better thing, because that means we're not following someone within that family. Well, aside from Finn, of course. But if Rey does end up being the daughter of Luke Skywalker, the long-lost daughter of Luke Skywalker, I would not be surprised. Because, after all, the Force is strong in his family. And so, thus far, even accounting for the prequels, Star Wars has been the story of the Skywalkers in this vast and wonderful universe. While I wouldn't mind them, focusing on and character outside of that family, and it probably would end up making for a better story, it'd be kind of cool to find out that Rey is actually Rey Skywalker and somehow got lost from her father Luke. How that would end up happening, I have no idea. If that's what's going on, I'm gonna leave that to the writers to figure out. Because
it'll probably be somewhere in between before the next movie comes out.
Yeah, if we do find that out. Well, if we do find that out, because this movie seems to be paralleling bits from the other movies, we're probably going to find out in Episode 8 if that is the case. I mean, I realize we kind of had that kind of reveal with, revealing that Kylo Ren is Ben Solo, Han and Leia's son. But in order to kind of parallel that, we might end up finding out that not only is Rey being trained by Luke, but that they find out that he's her father. And like I said, I don't know if that would make a better story or not. Maybe it wouldn't, but it would be damn cool. So, I guess to sum this up, Star Wars, fuck yeah.
I said it was as advertised, but I got corrected by Stephanie. Better than advertised.
Yes, and yeah, everything that led up to this would. Some of the things that led up to this, some of the things that they released as kind of supplemental material ended up being lackluster. Of course, in some of the cases, we'll blame that on the people directly responsible for that. But this movie ended up being very much the Star Wars movie that we hoped it would be. And this new trilogy is going to take us for an emotional thrill ride, but
thank you, J.J. Abrams, for not messing it up.
Yeah, thank you, J.J. Abrams, for an awesome movie. And to those of you who took your kids to see Star Wars instead of the Chipmunks movie, thank you for being good parents, because you have given your kids a much more endearing joy than songs written by people formerly a part of LMFAO. So, until next time, I am Jeremy.
And I'm Robert.
Keep it casual, y'all, and may the Force be with you.